All right, now this, of course, is the big story that we are tracking here on Fine Print. And this is a deja vu moment for the people in Britain. Now, if things go according to plan, a week from now, we could have a new Prime Minister at 10 Downing Street. After Liz Truss's resignation, the contest to elect a Conservative Party's leader is happening all over again. Now, any potential candidate needs the backing of at least about 100 Tory lawmakers to stand. So who will be able to get these votes and the support from the members of Parliament within the Tory party is pretty much anyone's guess. And on this show, over the last few days, we've been telling you about the potential successes of Liz Truss. But the biggest names in contention right now, believe it or not, are the two names that you know really well, Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. Now, former Chancellor Rishi Sunak was proven right in opposing Trussnomics. Now, he came second to Truss in the previous prime ministerial race that was held just a few weeks ago. Now, reports say that he's got the backing of most members of Parliament. He's almost certain to stand. But the question, of course, is, can he win? After having been rejected by the Conservative Party members so recently, can Rishi Sunak rise to the top post? Now, we ask this because his rival could, of course, be the leader who won the last election for the Tories. He got them one of their biggest majorities. Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, with his very fancy tousled hair and a reputation for being in the media limelight for not always the right reasons. His personal charisma was reportedly has got a large part to play behind the Tories' showing in 2019. And Johnson's leadership was also instrumental in getting Brexit done. But the consequences of Brexit are pretty much here for everyone to see.
The oven already pie. This is the get Brexit done. This is the perfect metaphor for what we're going to do in the run-up to Christmas. If we can get a working majority, we have a deal. It's ready to go. You saw how easy it is. We put it in, slam it in the oven, take it out. There it is. Get Brexit done. Take the country forward. Unite and level up.
Now, remember, Boris Johnson was forced to resign after a series of scandals. Partygate was particularly damaging. While most British people were locked up in their homes during the height of the pandemic, Boris Johnson and members of his staff were seen partying at 10 Downing Street. They were getting booze from their nearest supermarkets and having a good time in general.
There was a brief gathering in the Cabinet Room shortly after 2 p.m, lasting for less than 10 minutes, during which people I work with kindly passed on their good wishes. And I have to say, in all frankness, at that time, it did not occur to me that this might have been a breach of the rules.
Now, Boris Johnson's insistence that he did not know the events and the parties that were being held didn't hold much weight. A rebellion occurred. The cabinet members resigned, including, of course, Rishi Sunak, who was then the Chancellor. Boris didn't have much of a choice. He had to step down. But during his farewell speech, Johnson had sparked speculation about a possible return to the top job. He'd made a reference to the Roman statesman, Lucius Cincinnatus.
And like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough. And I will be offering this government nothing but the most fervent support.
Now, remember, Cincinnatus left Rome to work on his farm, but he was later called upon to Rome to lead the country. So it's been less than 2 months since Boris Johnson left number 10 Downing Street. He hasn't officially said anything about running for the top job again, but his supporters are putting his name forward. Defence Minister Ben Wallace has said that he's, of course, leaning towards Johnson. The Tories are worried about their falling popularity, and Labour is, of course, waiting to pounce. If not out of love, then out of necessity. Tories may want to opt for a familiar face. But the question, of course, is, can Bojo be brought back with such rapidity again? And can he bring back his charisma to provide stability for the people in Britain? All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what's likely to happen in this race to elect the next Prime Minister of Britain, we're being joined by Christina Patterson, who's joining us live from Northamptonshire in England. She's a journalist and also an author. Christina, thank you very much indeed for joining us in this broadcast and beyond. The question that I want to ask you, of course, is this. Boris Johnson was shunted out of power just about 2 months ago for the series of scandals that took place during his tenure. And now, in these unprecedented times that we live in, it appears that Boris Johnson, along with Rishi Sunak, are the two faces who are most likely to face off to emerge as the next Prime Minister of Britain.
Yes. I mean, what can I say? Listening to that summary you just gave of what has happened in British politics over the past couple of years, well, it is actually longer than the past couple of years. It's really for the past 6 years, but in particular, for the past couple of years, it's mortifying. We are mostly absolutely mortified. We have become basket case Britain. My father was a diplomat for a while. I'm glad, I miss him hugely, but I'm glad that he's actually not alive to see the chaos and clown show that is now happening in this country. Now, is it possible? I mean, I think many of us, when we saw last night that Boris Johnson was considering standing, first there was a sense of utter disbelief and then mounting horror. And the initial reports were that he wouldn't get enough support from Tory MPs because you would think that Tory MPs had some degree of sanity left and had some sense of how desperately unpopular Boris Johnson has become with most of the population, because not only because he is the first British Prime Minister to be found to have broken the law that he himself made in office, and because he is under investigation from a group called the Privileges Committee, which may well find that he misled the House of Commons, which is a very, very serious offence and for which he would have to resign, but also because he held parties while we were all locked away in our homes and people couldn't even say goodbye to dying relatives. And I think the Tory MPs who are thinking, oh, but, Boris Johnson got us this great, thumping great majority in 2019, they have forgotten the real pain and heartbreak for people and what they went through during the pandemic. Most people in this country will never forgive Boris Johnson for that. They will never forgive him for that. And they will never forgive Liz Truss for what she has put us through in the past few weeks. I mean, every single person in this country is poorer as a result of what Liz Truss has done. Now, obviously, we are, a rich country, but there are people experiencing real poverty, people having to choose between heating and eating, and many people now are having to pay several £100s more on their mortgage than they did even 3 weeks ago. So we are in a really, really parlous state. And I think if Tory MPs do vote for Boris Johnson, followed by what the system they have agreed upon is that the last two candidates will go to the Tory party membership who will vote online. Now, it looks as though there's great insecurity actually in our online voting systems, and by next Friday we'll have a candidate. If Tory party members vote for Boris Johnson to be Prime Minister, then they are certainly voting for the Tory party to lose the next election, which is fine by the majority of the British public, because mostly we are absolutely disgusted with Tory party behaviour. But it does mean we have a lot of chaos to get through first.
Absolutely, indeed, because there is indeed a lot of chaos that the next person, whoever it will be at 10 Downing Street, will have to address very, very immediately. Because the fact is, Christina, at this point of time, the way things are looking out for the Tory party, it is bringing up the same set of faces that we looked at just about 2 months ago. The Tory party's leadership appears to be in complete disarray, and this is perhaps the biggest crisis that the Tories have been in, perhaps since their inception, because there is virtually no second rung of leadership that the Tories can in fact fall back on to try and address the crisis that they presently have. The question that I want to ask you is, irrespective of who's the face that is put forth, whether it be Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak, do you think the Tories will have a leg to stand on the next general election?
I don't think they can win the next election. I mean, that would have seemed unbelievable to say even a year ago, given that they had a majority of 80. And it seemed very hard that any opposition party could beat that record or actually win an election outright. And the sort of best that Labour Party felt they could hope for was probably some kind of arrangement with the SNP and other opposition parties. But I think now, I agree with your assessment. I think the Tory party is possibly in the process of destroying itself. It's actually several factions now who all hate each other. And that's the problem with finding a candidate. I mean, it seems evident to most people that Rishi Sunak is by far the best candidate. You know, he is extremely bright, he is sound, he has integrity, and I think he is, I mean, I think we should have a general election, but if we are going to have yet another Tory party Prime Minister thrust upon us, then I can't see why you wouldn't go for Rishi Sunak. But I do think the Tories will lose the next election. I think they will fight themselves practically to death, and I think it will take them a long time to recover from this.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Christina Patterson, for joining us and getting us all those insights there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.